This is Ivy. Check 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, I did.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave. Another great panel for you right here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Rachel Whittaker is a video journalist for NOLA.com, and Jeff Duncan is the columnist for NOLA.com. And welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
As always, I'd like to start off talking a little bit about what you guys are involved in. And Rachel, tell us a little bit about what's happening at NOLA.com.
Well, right now our focus is on Black and Gold Today. It's our daily Saints show. We have player interviews and guests from around the country. We've really expanded the show, and it's going very, very well. And I also do it's actually every day now, our LSU show called Talkin' Tigers, and hit a little bit about football, basketball, and it's a lot of fun, going great. Yeah.
Beautiful. Jeff, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. Of course, columnist for the New Orleans Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. What's going on in your life?
Well, as we were talking off the air, it's a very busy time right now because we're overlapping basketball and football. And I love this time of year. I think it's the best time for us. But it does create a lot of issues with schedules.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, we got Pelicans. I'm going to be going to some college basketball games next week, which I'm really excited about. And this weekend, I'll be traveling down to Crowley, Louisiana for the funeral. A very sad story. Orlando Thomas, former Lafayette star and NFL star, passing away on Monday from ALS. Want to cover that funeral. It should be, I think, a very compelling day. He was a huge star.
Yes, he was.
In the Lafayette area.
Yeah, and a pretty darn good safety in the NFL.
I think 9 interceptions his rookie year.
Yeah.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, a great player, no question.
Yeah, it's really a sad thing about what's happening with a lot of the football players that are dealing with ALS right now. But the good thing is now, at least there's a spotlight on it.
No question about it, and the league is addressing it through some funding. It's just not arriving soon enough. It's tied up in courts.
Yes.
Let's hope that thing gets settled eventually so some of these players can get the relief they need.
Absolutely. And of course, we all obviously know what the plight of Steve Gleason here in New Orleans and are pulling for him every day.
No question.
No doubt. Let's jump into it. Saints 4-5. Lose to the 49ers in the second of a back-to-back heartbreak for folks from Southeast Louisiana, 27-24 in overtime. And, man, after back-to-back games where the Saints looked like they had turned it around, even on a short week with Carolina as well, the Saints have an exciting game against San Francisco. But, as always, it seems like this season, more than any other season, you've got a situation where they're turning the ball over. You've got some breakdowns on the defensive side of the ball. And it's just, as I've mentioned on my radio show, it's not something we've been accustomed to in a Peyton coach team. And Jeff, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on this game with the Niners and Is this something, maybe just a bump in the road for this team? Is it something that, or is this just kind of a microcosm of what we've seen all season?
Well, I think a little of both, Eric. I really felt like the Saints played very well in that game. I was impressed with them more in defeat than I have been in some of their victories this year. I'm a big believer in the 49ers. I think I picked that team to go very deep in the playoffs, and I think they eventually will. And I think the Saints caught them at a bad time. They were a desperate team, and they came in, as you could tell, caught the Saints right off guard.
If San Francisco would have lost that game, they
were done.
Yeah, they would have
probably done.
Would have been done.
They were in a division where they had no margin for error. The Saints have a little margin for error. So I felt like in coming back from a deficit, they put themselves in that hole with the turnovers. But I was impressed with the Saints. I feel like I'm not nearly ready to write this team off. I think they're going to reel off a bunch of wins here in a row. I think that was the last major hurdle. But I do think it's indicative of a team that still isn't good enough to compete with the elite teams in the NFL. I think that was clear because I think San Francisco is only going to keep getting better. They're going to get Navarro Bowman back, Aldon Smith's back.
Right.
That's going to be a team the Saints might see down the road.
Yeah. What can you add, Rachel?
Right, well, I think Jeff's right on the money against San Francisco. It's not the same. If you fall into a hole against San Francisco, it's not the same as falling into a hole against Tampa Bay like they did. I believe it was the same margin even, but it's the turnovers that just really, really are disappointing this season. I mean, Drew, on Wednesday at his weekly press conference, he says he's quote unquote annoyingly optimistic among in the locker room with his teammates, but I mean, you can only be so optimistic when you keep turning the ball over at such crucial times.
Right.
That's what really is just getting them. And then of course the fourth down breakdowns, against Detroit and against San Francisco. I mean, it just hurt them so bad.
Well, look, I think the turnovers are an issue, but I also think that he could go 3 or 4 games in a row and not turn it over, and then it's solved. I think, first of all, the interceptions against San Francisco, the only one I felt was egregious was the one right before halftime.
Yes.
I blame
when he was rushing
almost as much on Sean Payton for not calling a timeout. He had 2 timeouts there. And I know the Saints like to blitz the defense. They like to use momentum and create confusion. And I think that's what they were trying to do, but it worked to their detriment on that play.
Well, Jeff, and I agree with you when you look at the turnovers on Sunday against San Francisco. The first turnover, the interception with the pass to Colston, he gets tripped. If maybe he's not tripped, he's either fighting for that ball or he's making that reception, and probably isn't an interception at that point, even though it was a good play on the ball by the defensive back. The second one, the second interception, throwing in a triple coverage is just a bad habit of his. He has this belief that Jimmy Graham will be able to get up and get the ball, and also that he's going to be able to fit it in there. That's just that's not a mistake you want to make. And then the last one, the fumble, which again totally cost them the game. I don't really blame that on Breeze. Sure, he was holding the ball maybe a little bit longer, but as an offensive lineman, you do whatever you can to protect him there.
That's exactly
right. Here's the thing that people have to live with Drew Brees. What about the plays he made on Sunday? The play where he picked the ball up off the turf on a fumble and gets a completion off, where most quarterbacks
that was like a Colin Kaepernick move right there.
Exactly. Most quarterbacks just fall on the ball and take a 6-yard loss. He avoids the 6-yard loss. He spins away from 2 sacks and still completes a miraculous touchdown pass. You've got to live with the bad ones to get those good ones. It's all part of the same mentality. He's going to take chances, and you got to live with those chances when they don't work.
And Rachel, he said he's not going to change his style.
He's
going to. When you guys talked to him in the locker room this week, he was cognizant of the turnovers. He heard the boos, but he's not going to change as a quarterback.
Right. And of course he is one of the league's greatest, and he believes that he can change that. And I mean, I totally agree with him too. You have to, like Jeff said, everybody's going to make mistakes, but at the same time,
I would like to see him maybe be a little bit more conservative at times when, especially when the game is on the line, like at times. But, Breeze is Breeze at this point. That running game can protect him. But, at this point, it's un-Breeze-like to be able to look at the stat sheet and see 10 interceptions.
And I would agree with you in this regard. The 49ers are a team that you cannot take a lot of chances against. In that kind of game, he even said going in that he knew it was going to be one of those games you have to be patient. He said this leading up to the game, and yet here he goes and fires into triple coverage. So there are games where he can take more chances. I think that was not one he could afford to, because that's a very good defense. Antoine Bethea is a Pro Bowl player. Made an incredible play on that. on that interception, Ahmad Brooks, very similar type of player.
Yeah.
So, that's a team that's going to make their own plays. You can't give them anything.
And in the Dome, as I've mentioned on this program, on our radio show, the team has the ability to get over that, to overcome those turnovers. On the road, it's very, very difficult for them to overcome those turnovers.
Exactly. Although on the short week in Carolina, everybody thought that was going to be a huge hurdle. But I mean, they really took care of business there. So with the Saints, sometimes you don't think that they can do something, and they do it. And so it's going to be interesting though to see with the balance that they've found too with the run game.
866-3200 is the phone number if you'd like to get involved in the show. Jeff Duncan and Rachel Whittaker, the New Orleans Times-Picayune, to Uptown. And Peter, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Eric, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Peter. Your question or comment?
Well, I must say that I've listened to what you all have said just now, and I got to completely disagree as far as what you've said about Drew Brees. It's clear, if you've watched all the games, that Drew Brees, instead of the Saints being 4-5, they could easily be 8-1 were it not for Drew Brees and his turnovers. The interception in the end zone of the Atlanta game in the first of the year ruined a field goal, and so it doesn't come down to the end of the game. The pick six against the Cleveland Browns lost that game. That was ridiculous. The interception with the last 3 minutes of the Detroit game led to the go-ahead touchdown, so they lost that game. The third play of the San Francisco game, you threw an interception, and they went down 7-0 immediately. So all this stuff about Drew Brees being elite, and he may have been at one time, but let's tell the truth. Let's understand what he's dealing with right now. His decision-making is awful, and it's about time somebody said so.
Peter, thank you for the phone call. By the way, I've said that on my radio show. Jeff, your thoughts on the decision-making of Drew Brees?
Well, I think I would agree with Peter in this regard. They're not a good enough team to overcome it anymore. I mean, the days of this team blowing out people by 10, 20 points are over. And so the margin for error has been lessened around the NFL. The rest of the NFL has caught up to the Saints.
And sometimes I think he tries to put a little too much on
I agree.
his
This
shoulders.
team's got a good running game. Their defense is shaky. I think sometimes that factors into his decision-making. But I also think that some of these plays, like I disagree with Peter in this regard. I felt like the Detroit turnover was just he didn't see the defender, and those things happen. He got pressure. He didn't see him, and mistakes are going to happen in the game. The Saints still had the ball back with 1:50 on the clock, plenty of time to drive down and get a field goal and win the game, and they couldn't do it. In the past, this team was good enough to overcome that and drive down.
And that's what people are used to. They remember
So it
that.
magnifies the mistakes, and right now these mistakes are being magnified because they're in these tight games, and they're not good enough on defense. Despite his turnovers on Sunday against the Niners, if they can just stop a 4th and 10, 51-yard gain, they still win the game.
And Rob Ryan said that when that happened in Detroit. He said, "Yeah, we can't let that happen." And
right. Your thoughts on Peter's comments?
Well, I completely do agree with Jeff, but right. I mean, the days of the Saints having the offensive line they had in the Super Bowl year was just dominate. Yes. Yeah. They dominated, and they don't have that anymore. You see Drew under a lot more pressure, and so I think that adds to it.
And that's where the mistakes happen in a lot of cases, when he's under duress. Yeah. Where in the past, maybe they got away with it a little bit, but when he's under duress, it to me is when a lot of his interceptions, a lot of when he's trying to fit that ball in, and or again, some of it could be on the receivers, but I'm kind of with Peter on this. I think that his decision-making at times has hurt this team.
Well, look, the Carolina game, I think he had a pick that ricocheted off somebody and bounced. I mean, that was a fluke.
That's a fluke
Those
play.
Things happen. Again, I felt like the play Antoine Bethea made was just a great play. Sometimes you have to tip your cap to the opponent. We can't always focus on Drew Brees. Sometimes the guys make a great play. The guy in Detroit, who I don't think even Brees saw, had said that he, kind of decoyed him. Sometimes it's a great play by the opponent. Can't always be on them. Sometimes I think he's being put in a difficult position too, because they put so much trust in Drew Brees. Maybe it's better for sometimes to lean on that.
And they have to remember the balance that they have. I mean, Mark Ingram, 3 straight 100-yard games.
I think this team is running the ball better than they ever have.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think we're going to see Sean Payton start to lean on that more and more in the second half of the seaseason.
866-3200 to Dale on the West Bank. Dale, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. How you doing, Dale?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How about you?
Doing great, Dale. What's your comment or question?
All right. My comment is basically I'm kind of piggybacking on what the first commenter just said, the guy that just got off. I kind of agree with that, but I don't necessarily blame Breeze for that. I blame more Sean Payton, because if Breeze is making more and more of these mistakes, and we all know he's getting older, he's had that shoulder surgery years ago or whatever the case may be, it seems that Sean Payton is afraid to lean on the running game. He's been leaning on it a little more the past few weeks, but every time we get in a critical situation, he does not let Ingram run the rock. I believe I think the first half we barely ran. We got down. The second half, because of Ingram's running, we got back in the game. We got more balance. And in overtime, I think Ingram may have carried once. We went exclusively to pass, and they sacked Breeze left and right, and it just exposed us. Sean Payton needs to understand that Breeze is not the quarterback that he once was, where he can carry somebody just on his arm anymore. Those days are over. We need to get more balance. Ingram, to me right now, should be the most valuable player on the offense. Everything should go through him so we can get one-on-one coverage with these receivers, and then Drew can look downfield and find his man-to-man coverage instead of throwing in a triple coverage and all that stuff. So
Dale,
that's basically what I had to say.
Thank you for the phone call. Jeff, you want to take this first?
Well, Dale, I agree. I agree to some extent that Sean Payton, that's always going to be the question with Sean Payton. Will he trust and have the confidence in the running game to stick with it? And I think he's developing that confidence in the running game. We're seeing it a little more and more, maybe not enough. But I also think what you're saying and what we've talked about here on the program is when these turnovers tend to happen with Drew Brees, they happen when he's under duress.
Yes.
Well, that's a problem with the offensive line.
Absolutely.
You've got to protect the quarterback, or otherwise he's going to be led into some turnovers. So let's talk about really the problem is not Drew Brees declining, even though I think he probably is a little bit. It's natural.
He can say he feels like he's 25.
Right, but more and more, I think what we're saying here is the offensive line is not nearly as good as they used to be, and every quarterback looks average when your offensive line is good. What were the complaints we heard earlier this year about Tom Brady? After that Chiefs game, Tom Brady's declining. It was the offensive line wasn't protecting him. They protected him in recent weeks. He's thrown 18 touchdowns and 1 interception.
And that's what gets overlooked all the time. And the Saints' Super Bowl offensive line was just great. They had Pro Bowlers left and right, but they just don't have that right now. But they need to stay confident in the run game.
Right, and this is a different offensive line, it seems. Again, an offensive line that is maybe more suited to opening up holes in the running game. They seem to be more comfortable there than maybe they do in protecting Drew Brees.
There's no question, and I think opponents also know right now and this is something I think that's a little overlooked, without Pierre Thomas in there in pass protection, people are blitzing Drew Brees when they go to these nickel sets.
Yes.
They're coming after Travaris Cadet back there. These are things that are very subtle things, but opponents know how to scout the Saints in that regard, and it's creating some problems. That's exactly what happened on that turnover in overtime. Right. They couldn't get to Ahmad Brooks to get the help and create a turnover.
And again, as great as Armstead has played this year, and he's been a pretty good tackle, especially when you're looking at from year 1 to year 2. That's just a play that you cannot allow your guy to get to the quarterback there. You do whatever you got to do. You tackle him, you get a penalty, you do whatever you got to do. You can't let him get to Breeze there.
Right, and that was a death blow. I mean, the game was over.
No, game's over there.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes the Saints are so cognizant. I mean, Breeze is brilliant, maybe the best I've ever seen at getting out of negative plays. They're so conscious about avoiding negative plays. How many times do we see Breeze throw with guys wrapped around him to avoid a sack? So it keeps him out of that 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 18. But it also comes with a price because every once in a while he's going to make one of these desperation throws. And we saw it against Tampa.
Yes.
It ended up in a pick.
Well, and I think that's where the fans' frustration is. In the past, Bree's been able to get away with that. And that's, I think, why people start looking at the age factor here that, Breeze is not getting away with that now. He's not really, with the exception of that pirouette and of course, the touchdown pass to Jimmy Graham, which, was an incredible play. And you mentioned the other one, picking up the ball, obviously, and getting the first down. Those plays have been few and far between when you look at him under duress.
But the common denominator is he's always under duress.
Agreed.
The Tampa pick right before halftime, he's spinning out of a guy in his arms. We've seen him more under duress than we've ever seen him.
I definitely agree with that. Back to the phone lines we go. To the West Bank and Eugene. Eugene, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. How are you, Eugene?
Hi, Eric. You're enjoying the show.
Thank you.
Congrats to the panel for the analysis. But my question is, what do you guys think about Kenny Vaccaro, his play and his decision-making? As a number 1 draft pick, I'm not impressed. I'll hang up and let you guys discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. I think he's in a little bit of a sophomore slump. I do. We heard early in the season that he wanted to really kind of play more of that strong safety role, didn't want to be kind of that jack-of-all-trade type player. Obviously, he's had 2 breakdowns on long plays. You know, he's more suited maybe to the strong safety position than maybe the free safety position.
Yeah, and he's been forced into that because of the loss of Bird, and I think maybe that's kind of thrown.
I think the domino effect with Jairus Byrd is being felt by Kenny Vaccaro. I mean, Kenny Vaccaro's strength is near the box, up near the line of scrimmage, letting him be that joker guy if he has to be the joker guy. And that's what Jairus Byrd was brought in to do. He was brought in to be the safety valve, the center fielder. And his loss, I think, has really crippled the secondary in that regard. He's not comfortable back there. He's not a ball hawk.
Right.
He's not going to get a lot of interceptions in his career. He's going to make a lot of plays, but not in the passing game. And I think it's really had a toll on him. And I think he's lost a little confidence because of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, just kind of looking at this team right now, just when you look at Bush, when you look at Vaccaro, 2 guys that are really strong safeties and not free safeties, and they're kind of in a pinch right now. They don't really have a free safety back there. The closest they had maybe was Vinny Cincinnati, and now he's on injured reserve. So be interested to see how they play this out the rest of the season. But he's in a little bit of a sophomore slump. There's no doubt about it.
I think they're patching it together with baling wire and Band-Aids this season. The secondary needs a lot of help. They clearly swung and missed on Champ Bailey, and Patrick Robinson has had his issues. And
he's been really up and down.
Played better lately.
Yeah.
The spotlight's been taken off of him. I think he's gained a little confidence, but they've got work to do back there.
You do have to say that when you want to talk about Robinson and White, both are playing better. They both obviously are not going to be superstars in the league. But considering where they were to where they are now, both are playing much better. What really scared me more than anything else, honestly, was the situation with Lewis this past weekend, the injury to Lewis, and keeping him in the game with that injury. Now the hope is it doesn't linger. This guy's having a great year right now.
Yeah, he is the best ball hawk in this secondary.
No
I mean, I think that's what they're kind of lacking this year. I mean, I feel like Corey White, even Patrick Robinson, sometimes like they don't really know where the ball is. Maybe that's just me, but that's what I've
and I felt like they really were bailed out on Sunday by a lot of drops. I mean, Anquan Bolden doesn't drop a lot of balls.
Yes.
He had 4 drops in that game. It's unheard of.
First downs, they easily could have kept dropping.
Again, San Francisco is a very good team with a great perimeter core, great receiving depth. They're not going to face that every week. That's why I was impressed with what they did. I mean, that's a very good team they played, and they fought back from a 14-0 deficit. Again, I think this team's going to reel off some wins here, and the sky's going to be blue again.
Everybody in South Louisiana across the Gulf Coast is hoping you're right. Back to the phone lines we go, 866-3200. Tommy is in Baton Rouge. Tommy, thanks for calling Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Tommy, you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm actually I'm a fan of football, and I watch a lot of games. And I think that Drew Brees is an awesome quarterback. However, I also know how the system of football goes, so it's not just only on the quarterback. Receivers have to run timed routes, and if they're not in their actual spot they're supposed to be in, then that can be a whole conflict of interest. A pass can be thrown, then an interception can occur. However, from watching the Saints, the defensive backs, man, it's real tough in the secondary. I think that's the biggest issue right now. And definitely getting those guys, up to par will kind of probably change the productivity of what's, the Saints' progress.
Tommy, thanks for the phone call. Jeff, last year we talked a lot about the receivers' inability to get off the jam. This year we haven't talked a lot about that, but again, it is a timing offense. When you're watching the game from the press box, what are you seeing out of these wide receivers?
Well, they made great strides the last few weeks. I think Henry Ellard's done a great job this year. I mean, he's actually brought up Brandon Cooks very quickly. and he's becoming a playmaker more and more every week.
We've seen that in the past couple of weeks, especially the deep ball. People are asking about that.
A byproduct of the running game.
And Kenny Stills as well. So I really think like they're fine offensively. I think they've got great balance. I think this team's suited now to win games on the road in cold weather. They're going to have an opportunity here coming up in Pittsburgh and Chicago.
That's right.
So we're going to find out a lot about how suited this team is to win on the road. But I do agree with the caller in that you see it a lot in the passing game. We saw that on Sunday. Actually, I felt like out of the 49ers passing game, some of those drops, balls were getting on Bolden quick, getting on the receivers quick because he was having to unload it a little quicker than he wanted to because of the pressure he got. The timing aspect was off in their passing game. You could see the Niners are not comfortable passing the ball. They want to run it.
Right.
And the Saints shut down that run in the second half.
Yeah.
What about the defensive backs? Really, when you look at it, just kind of riddled by injuries more than anything else. When you look at, as you mentioned, the domino effect of losing a Jarris Byrd.
Right, exactly. And I mean, it seems like Vinny Sinceri was a stud on special teams. So I think that might hurt them. I feel like every time somebody does something good, I mean, Byrd, while he forced the Saints' first turnover of the season, and so that obviously hurts. And then, of course, Sinceri, he's on IR now. But yeah, I mean, the defense, they just have to play tighter. I feel like they just leave too much cushion in between their
and I think you could make this argument, too, and I said this back during the draft, and I think Eric, you and I have talked about this. They could have gone with a corner in the first round. If you looked at the depth of this past draft, the talent level, the receiving core was very deep, and you see it around the league right now. Jordan Matthews on the Eagles the other night, second-round draft pick, third-round draft picks, John Brown in Arizona, Moncrief with the Colts.
Yes.
There's productivity up and down the first 3 rounds out of the receiving core. Now, maybe these guys aren't quite as talented as Brandon Cooks, but I guarantee you if they were in the Saints system with Drew Brees throwing to them, they would be producing.
Yes.
And the cornerback level was the depth was not the same. It dropped off after the first 4 or 5 guys, and you end up taking a guy like Stanley Jean-Baptiste, who's a project, who's not contributing at all this year. You could make an argument they would have been better served taking a corner and coming back getting a receiver.
With a receiver.
I think that's playing out right now. But they thought Champ Bailey was the answer there.
They did, Jeff. And again, that may be the most frustrating thing for fans that are looking at this defensive backfield right now. Obviously, they thought they could squeeze another year out of Bailey. The backup plan was at this point either Corey Wright or Patrick Robinson. They had to know going into this. They've been talking about it after the draft. They thought that Baptiste would be maybe a project, and God, he's second-round pick, and he can't even get on the field.
Yeah, he's been thrown into situations, into key situations. We saw that he's just not ready for. And I think the injuries in the secondary have just really exposed things like that. Yeah.
Especially a bump and run type corner as well, where you figure, look, you're not asking him to do a lot in terms of looking at the scheme. If you want to line up somebody bump and run, man to man, I mean that's just the essence of what a corner does. And he hasn't been able to get on the field doing that. And that was his forte supposedly at Nebraska.
And I think, look, he may end up being a great player. I mean, we've seen the Saints bring in guys, and Mark Ingram was written off, and Jermon Bushrod, and I remember John Stinchcomb was written off because they were slow to develop, and they turned out being great draft picks. That could happen with him, but the problem was they missed on Champ Bailey.
Yes.
And that, to me, was a more egregious mistake because everyone around the league knew Champ Bailey was done. I mean, that was a common, when they signed him, I had colleagues calling me asking me what the Saints were thinking. The Saints missed on that one. That was one they thought they had over on the league. They thought it was another Darren Sharper situation, and they missed.
Coming right back to the phone lines in just a moment. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night, 6 p.m. right here on WLAE TV, with a rebroadcast on Friday night, 10 p.m. here on WLAE TV, and also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, now at a new time, 9 p.m. Quick break. We'll come right back to the phone lines. LSU, Tulane, and Pelicans also on tap for us tonight. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisby's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbysrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natel's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Again, every Thursday night, 6 p.m. right here on WLAE TV. From NOLA.com tonight, we've got Rachel Whittaker and Jeff Duncan. And, of course, your phone calls, 8866-3200. Straight back to the phone lines we go. James is in Franklinton. James, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
How you doing, Eric? I love the panel.
Thank you, James.
Look, I wanted to ask you a question. I called last week, and I asked about the running backs. Because of the situation, I'm asking about it again. Do you think we need to go ahead and we should this year, after the season is done, draft a running back high? I mean, a good running back high, because it doesn't look like Ingram's going to be sticking around. I'm going to go ahead and hang up and listen to what you all got to say.
James, as always, thank you for your phone call. Certainly appreciate it. Rachel, Ingram looks like he's going to break the bank, if there is such a thing for a running back in the NFL this year. I think he's going to be out of the Saints' price range, honestly. And I don't think the Saints are going to give him the carries that he's going to want going forward. Is this a draftable position high, or do they stick with, which has been their MO, finding undrafted free agents and fitting them in their system?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see when Kyrie Robinson and Pierre Thomas start to get healthy again. I mean, Pierre, I don't know. I think he's more useful in that pass protection that they haven't had. But yeah, I mean, Ingram's just on fire, you know. But it's gonna be interesting to see if he can keep up this workhorse role. Then the Saints are really gonna have some questions to answer if he gets picked up, or so, you know.
Right, Jeff. Do they break the mold here? Do they do what they did with Ingram a couple years ago and draft a running back high, or is this a position? I don't. I really don't.
Well, look, Kyrie Robinson is under contract. He'll be back.
Yes.
Cadet should be back.
Yes.
And Pierre should be back. I think you can get by with those three. I don't think we're going to see a big drop-off. Even though I agree that Ingram's their best back right now, I think this team has proven over the years that really anybody on the perimeter can be replaced. Yeah. Other than, I mean, as long as number 9's under center, and I would say Jimmy Graham is almost as close to irreplaceable as you can get it as on the perimeter. But otherwise, I think this offense will keep rolling. I would be surprised if they would draft. They've got some other needs. They need a tackle. They need a corner.
Yes.
We all know that.
Those are
and maybe another linebacker. Right. I mean, Lofton and Hawthorne are getting up there in age. Right. I thought Ramon Humber played his best game this weekend, and he's probably going to be the replacement for David Hawthorne in the future.
Right. That's I'm with you on that, and I'll say that to me the concentration going into this draft and free agency period, offensive line. You realize what the situation is with Breeze now. You see how porous it's been at times. They've got to concentrate on offensive line. And you mentioned corner, which I agree with. Damon is on the West Bank. Damon, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Okay, let's go to Brian in Ponchatoula. Brian, welcome.
Hey, how y'all doing, panel? I got a question for you. Eric, is Tanner Lee going to be able to get a touch on the ball? He definitely has the arm strength, but he needs to touch on the ball. And I just want to ask what the prognosis for the future of Tulane football.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. I tell you what, I love the kid, and I thought last week was his best game at Tulane.
Agreed.
He's just, I thought sitting down and watching for a couple weeks really helped him, and I just think he's going to progress as a quarterback. They've got a quarterback that quite frankly, can maybe go in the mold of some of the other quarterbacks, had a chance to play in the NFL. I really like Tanner Lee.
Yeah, for a freshman out there, a redshirt freshman who's gotten better, really has.
He really has.
And I know what he's saying about the touch. I think that comes.
It's going to come with time.
Yeah, that comes with time. I mean, this guy's going to get bigger and stronger. He's still a young kid. I think Tulane's future is very bright.
And they have those running backs too that we were talking about,
just
the young running backs.
Yeah,
So
they do.
That'll help.
They do. And one of the knocks against him has been early in his career, locking in on receivers. Right. That's going to change the longer he has a chance to play, the more obviously chance that he has to practice. I think the sky's the limit for the kid. I really do.
That was a huge win for their program.
I think the biggest win of the season, and maybe
By
the
far,
biggest win under C.J. Johnson's tenure as coach.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. Now, can they follow it up? I mean, Memphis is a rising program. They've got a great young coach. They're going to be dangerous this weekend, but this is a big game for them, just I think to continue the momentum toward the end of the season. Really, there's not much hope, I think, for a bowl game.
No, the bowl game's out. But, guys, it is good news for Tulane this week. It is homecoming. From what we're hearing, there's going to be a lot of alumni that's going to be in the stands. One of the things that I've been very critical of, again, especially with all these TV games, the stands are empty. And a lot of the tickets are sold, but there's no one in the seats. We're going to see this week probably as close to a full stadium as we've seen since they've opened up the stadium. So it'll be interesting to see how the crowd kind of interacts in this game. But, coming off that win, it's got to be nothing but confidence for Tulane right now.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt.
866-3200. Let's head to Quincy in New Orleans. Quincy, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Quincy.
Hey, how's it going, panel? Got a question for y'all. Is it time for us to look for another big receiver? Because Marcus Colston this year, I don't know what's going on in his head, but he seems like there's something on his mind, and I feel like we might need another receiver. And plus, Kenny Stills has dropped a lot. And where's Nick Toon? Where has he been all season? So is it time for another, big receiver? Thank you.
Quincy, thank you. Guys, I had high hopes for Nick Toon. I really thought he was going to be the heir apparent to Marcus Colston. Colston seems, again, I don't know if it's age, I don't know if it's concentration, whatever it is, but he's not the same guy that he once was. I don't know if they go out and draft another receiver high, but they definitely need a bigger receiver to come in and maybe take Colston's place down the line here.
Yeah, Nick Toon had some really good hands in training camp. Everybody, he definitely caught my eye and a lot of us in the media watching him. So we thought that he might have more opportunities, but yeah, definitely Brandon Cook's coming in. I think that might have been what the Saints had in mind to kind of if Colston started to he's seen his better days maybe.
Well, let's remember also. I mean, Nick Toon's just kind of caught in a numbers game, right? There's no lack of confidence in Nick Toon on Airline Drive.
Right.
They're still very confident with him. And Brandon Coleman on the practice squad, a young player. 6'6", that could develop down the road. So I think they've got a couple prospects in-house.
Didn't they keep Sean-Tavis Jones as well?
Yes, Sean-Tavis Jones. Right. So I think they've got some depth there on the roster in a position that, with the way Cooks and Stills are coming on, I think receivers is a low priority for this team.
Yeah, it's always been, yeah.
To Laplace and Kobe. Kobe, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Kobe.
Yes, I have a question. Do you think if we've tightened up on defense, we can win the division and go to the playoffs?
Thank you for the phone call, Kobe. I think the division's so bad that playoffs, you probably have to really stumble not to get in the playoffs in the NFC South.
Yes, no doubt. But the defense, that is absolutely going to be the key. We've seen some more pressure. I mean, I was pretty surprised at how much they got to the mobile guys like Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick. So that was encouraging right there. But I mean, the corners and the secondary, they have to be more ball hawks,
Yeah, look, they're going to win this division, barring something unforeseen.
Yeah, right. No doubt.
I'll be stunned. And I think they can still easily finish 10-6. I think they're going to win the next two games. The Pittsburgh game, I think, is going to be tough.
Yes.
They come back 6-6. I see them winning their last four games and ended up at 10-6. I'll be surprised if they're worse than 9-7.
Jeff, if that happens, the one good thing about this team is confidence and momentum. Once that happens, things can happen in a locker room. And, Rachel mentioned the defense. They went from a defense that was maybe leading the league in hurries to now they're starting to get to the quarterback a little bit. They did have a little problem in containing Kaepernick and containing Cam Newton, but you're not going to find athletic guys like that every week in the NFL. It would be nice to see those guys get on a little bit of a roll here.
It all starts up front. We've talked about it before. Yeah. Those guys are being paid a lot of money. They're being counted on to shore up this defense. It starts up there.
No doubt. To Gentili and Marcus. Marcus, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for calling tonight, Marcus. How you doing?
Yes, how you doing, sir? I was wondering if you all do anything about a new LSU recruit that's basketball, change the subject a little bit. I was wondering, he's a 6'10" guy. I just know that much, and I was wondering if you all could talk about him.
Talking about Ben Simmons?
Ben Simmons,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, the Australian who's coming in, number one recruit in the country.
Yeah.
Can you guys elaborate on him a little bit?
Well,
Jeff?
yeah, I can tell you this. I mean, he's going to be the best player they've had there in a long time. I mean, he's a very skilled player for 6'9", very thin. He's going to have to put on some weight to play in the SEC, but from all reports, he's a guy that can handle the ball, can almost play that point forward position. He's built a lot like a Kevin Durant, but he has a different style of game. He's not strictly just an outside scorer. He can take you down inside on the blocks. He's going to be a tremendous player. And what's great about getting a guy like Ben Simmons is other players want to play with him.
Yes.
He's a very unselfish player. Yeah. He's the kind of guy that players, he galvanizes a team. So we're already seeing the Pied Piper effect there. Other great players are already taking a look at LSU. He could be a guy. He's a guy worth driving down to see because he's going to end up being a lottery pick in the NBA.
Well, and Jeff, we were talking about it before the show today. LSU has got a pretty darn good team this year. They're going to challenge in the SEC.
They should. Their front line, they've got 3 NBA players that are going to play in the NBA on their front line. They've got to get some consistent guard play. That's going to be the key. Gray, the junior college player, is a guy that they're going to lean on heavily. And the guy that's actually a good player is
Hornsby.
Yeah, Hornsby is a player. This guy can play. Can they get the depth? Look, they're not going to challenge Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's in another stratosphere. But this team to get to the tournament, I think, would be a great step for the program.
Yeah,
Can you imagine if Ben Simmons got to play a year with Jerome Martin? I mean, that's a big if right there. But,
right,
I mean,
Jordan Mickey. And the big kid that they recruited is a project, Albert Robinson.
The kid out of Texas.
Right, but he's gotten his body in shape, and he has a chance, I think.
He's a legit 7-footer.
Right.
And again, you can always use that at the center position in any league, much less the SEC.
Yeah, they're going to be really fun to watch.
Well, I'm looking forward. I love college basketball. I'm looking forward to it.
They have a lot of depth this year.
Yeah, they do. Damon is on the West Bank. Damon, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. How you doing, Damon?
How y'all doing? I got a question. Y'all think Keenan Lewis need help on defense?
I think he needs a lot of help in that secondary. Yes. Of course, that's what Jarris Bird was supposed to bring, but I definitely agree with you there. I was a little bit afraid, as I mentioned, when that injury happened, that he went back in the game. But, man, what a warrior he is.
He is. Yeah, you could tell how eager he was to try and get back in. I mean, I don't know how good of an idea it was for him to actually go back in there. I mean, but they need him really, really badly.
He's probably the second most irreplaceable player on the roster.
Behind Breeze.
Yeah.
Right.
And I talked to him after the game, and he was showing everybody his knee, which was grotesque.
Now, the picture I saw was correct. The softball size, it was huge.
Yes,
it was correct. He could hardly get his boxers on. He was needing help to get his boxers on. But I will say this, from all the diagnosis I've heard, it's bursitis, which just requires some drainage. It's not a structural injury, and that's good news. But look, if they had 11 Keenan Lewis is on defense, we'd be talking about
he lights out
right now because he is a warrior and he plays at a very, very high level and he's fearless.
He was. Of course, everybody wants to say that they're healthy, but in the locker room yesterday, he did say he was like, "I'm just ready for Sunday. I'm just ready for Sunday." He was.
I can't believe he gutted it out. Honestly, most players would have. In today's NFL, most players would have sat on the sideline.
He was on that bike,
What was interesting during the broadcast, I rewatched the broadcast, and it came out from Sean Payton to the broadcast team at Fox that their first priority in free agency a couple years ago was Derek Cox.
Yes.
Who Keenan Lewis was their second choice.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they would have signed him instead of Keenan Lewis?
Is Cox even in the NFL anymore?
No.
I don't think he is.
No, they brought him in for a tryout a few weeks back, didn't they? When they were having problems, couldn't even make the team then.
So it just shows you sometimes how serendipity plays into.
Yeah, well, and remember,
decisions.
he took the hometown discount too.
Right.
He definitely did. Oh, what a heartbreaker in Baton Rouge last week with Alabama coming to town. And again, we look at a great game with New Orleans and San Francisco, great game with LSU and Alabama. Jeff, I want to ask you first, the most glaring deficiency on this team right now is the quarterback position.
Right.
The last 2 games, you may be able to run the ball and get away with it. Ultimately, should they play Brandon Harris over the next 2 games? I know Les Miles is kind of staunch against it, but is this a time now, knowing that again, you're not going to climb back into the national championship race, you're not going to win the SEC, that maybe you come back to Harris and maybe see what he has?
Well, I would endorse that strategy, but I'm not sure Les Miles is going to do it. I think he's going to stick with Jennings. And sometimes I think LSU, when you watch how they handle their quarterbacks, it's almost the anti-New Orleans Saints. They breed a lack. There's like a lack of confidence, and I think the quarterbacks feel it. I'm not sure that these guys are as bad talent-wise as they're playing. I just think that they're so conservative that each throw is almost painful for the quarterback to make. I think they're scared to make a mistake because of the play calling. I think through osmosis they tend to play scared to some degree, whereas it's the opposite when you watch Drew Brees play. He almost needs to be reined in. I think sometimes they could free the reins a little bit even on Jennings, but there's no question they're only going to go as far as that quarterback can carry them, and right now he can't carry them past the elite level. It's
the toughest thing, I think, and Rich, you can comment on this. I think that you can mask deficiencies anywhere else on the field with the exception of the quarterback position. I think they try with the running game. I'd like to see Jennings maybe more out on the edge. We saw a little bit more of that against Alabama this week. I don't think he is a prototypical pocket passer, and I think that they've kind of I know the fans are frustrated, but I got to believe he's got to be a little frustrated as well in terms of how they're utilizing him.
Right, and that's what on my Talking Tigers show, actually leading up to the Alabama game, one of my coworkers, Jim Kleinpeter, and I were talking that giving Anthony Jennings some more designed runs could give him some more confidence, and we did see some of that, and it remains to be seen, maybe whether he could have run for it in overtime for that first down.
I thought he could have got a first down if he'd ran.
Well, look, I thought they managed, the coaching staff managed that game very well. They knew the only chance they had to win that game was to play at close to the vest. They got the late turnover, the gift wrap turnover. Look, you can argue all you want about the controversial call, but that game should have been won right there after that field goal. They couldn't tackle Alabama in bounds. That's just basic strategy in the 2-minute offense. You've got to get the guy down in bounds. They let him get out of bounds 3 times in 4 plays. That's on the defense, in my opinion.
To Hammond and Ryan. Ryan, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. How you doing tonight, Ryan? Ryan, you with us? Let's put Ryan on hold. I want you to ask Ryan not to listen to the TV, and we'll come back to Ryan. The offensive line has really come around. Jeff, I think the last time you were on the show, we talked about, to me, the way, as far as this team would go, as far as the offensive lines and defensive lines would take them, you got to like the way the offensive line has progressed here.
Yeah, I think they're the key to the entire season has been the offensive line. When they were playing poorly early in the year, this team struggled, and they have started to assert themselves. I thought they played very well last week. Look, yards were tough against Alabama for both sides. It was very difficult. It was one of those old blue-collar games. But I think they have established themselves. Lyle Collins is going to be a first-round draft pick, and the rest of these guys could be coming back. It's something to build upon for next season.
The hope is obviously that they'll come back.
Right.
So that,
never know.
The bottom line is that you'll have the opportunity to be able to at least have some continuity along that offensive line.
Yeah, and Lyle Collins made a good decision, to come on back for another year.
He's definitely a first-round pick.
Well, and I think what you talked about earlier, I think makes sense. I mean, why not? If Brandon Harris is the quarterback of the future, why not start grooming him now?
Offensive line.
The national title is over with.
It's done.
You might as well start at least getting him ready for the competition next year.
Because I don't think it's talent. I think it's more nerves than anything else. We saw that against Auburn. I mean, just really kind of a case of nerves. We've seen the guy throw the ball efficiently at times. You saw the comeback against Mississippi State. He just seemed to be a little bit rattled, much like he was against Wisconsin when he first came into the game. And he's just going to have to get through that and get over that. But I'd like to be able to see him, especially now, these next 2 games on the road, how he will deal with the hostile territory.
No doubt.
Well, look, it's not a question of talent. I mean, this guy's got NFL ability.
Got a great arm.
And there are people on the LSU coaching staff that will tell you they'd like to see him play more. I just think right now Les Miles is pulling the strings, and he wanted to see what happened, too. In his defense, they still had a lot to play for.
Sure.
Yeah,
and I think he felt like the best chance they had to beat Alabama. Now we'll see what he does going forward.
Right. Wallace is in New Orleans. Wallace, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Wallace.
Hi, how y'all doing today, my man?
How you doing?
I like to say, what's going on with Joe Morgan, man? What's happening with Joe Morgan? Is he going to come back and play this Sunday, sit down, Robin Meacham? Colston's trying to mess him up, too. Sit him down. Let's see what Joe Morgan do. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to let y'all talk. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Just got reinstated this week.
Yeah.
It's top secret, right? No one knows.
Double secret probation.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knows why.
Sean Payton was probed about it, and he was like, "That's between me and him. Like, that's it."
And look, if you're Joe Morgan and you're on the bubble, so to speak, you're not going to say a word because his job is in jeopardy right now. And I agree with Wallace in that I've felt all along. I'm a big Joe Morgan fan. Put him in the game. The guy's a playmaker. I'm not sure what the infatuation is with Robert Meacham, but he's certainly been phased out of late. He's seeing less snaps. But he is basically a young Robert Meacham. He's been compared to him.
Right.
Yeah.
He's got young legs. Maybe he's not back from the injury. The only thing I know of, and maybe he got frustrated.
Yeah, he's had so many unfortunate breaks with injury. Morgan has, and the times that we've seen him on the field, he's had that deep ball ability. That
he reminds me a little bit of the receiver version of Chris Ivory early in his career, where he'd make a play that no one else on the roster can make. And I think it's worth putting up with the growing pains of maybe a drop here or there. Yeah. For those big plays.
You got to account for him, though, Jeff. I mean, if you put him on the field, you got to at least account for that speed.
Right.
And that's the one thing. And when you get deep speed like that, like they used to do with Henderson, like they did with Meacham early in their careers, run them deep. Eventually, again, they may take a shot, but at the very least, the safety has to at least look and has to be cognizant of that guy going deep on him, and that opens up things underneath.
And maybe he's not back 100%. That's the only thing I can think of why the leash was so short with him, because it certainly was. And we've seen that in the past. It was that way with Nick Tooney a year ago. He had one bad game against the Jets, and he was out of there. Same thing with Morgan
with
this year.
Receiving core, it's been so deep, right? Like we mentioned earlier, it's not a lack of talent. It's just where can you find a spot? Because they've got so many people through the years so deep at that position.
And Colston, going back to something we talked about a little bit earlier, he has been disappointing this year. But a lot of it, I think, is that he has been a guy that has caught the ball consistently for Breeze. He's a guy that's gotten Breeze out of tough spots. When everything was breaking down, you could count on Colston. He just hasn't been that guy this year.
Well, and I think what we're seeing here, this is a common narrative and common thread, that 2006 draft class, which has been the core of this offense, is slowly starting to decline.
To get older.
And it's natural.
It happens.
It's natural.
No, it happens.
And that's what we're seeing this year in the offensive line, Colston, that group.
To Independence, Louisiana. And Brian, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Brian.
Hey, thank you, Eric. So my question is this, and something that I've always noticed traditionally, other than maybe last year with Mettenberger, has been traditionally the SEC, especially LSU, Alabama, those schools, typically don't have that top-notch quarterback. And I guess my question kind of alludes to the West Coast teams. You can go through West Coast teams and pick out the quarterbacks that go to the NFL. Why do you? I'm gonna stop and listen. Why do you think the SEC traditionally just doesn't have or go after those big name quarterbacks?
Thank you, Brian. I said on my radio show this week, if I am the best junior college quarterback coming out this year, if I'm the best high school senior quarterback, I'm looking at LSU. I mean, you look at the plethora of talent they have over the next couple of years, they're going to be in line for a national championship. Why would you not want to go to a team that, again, immediately you can compete for the starting job? But I think Brian makes a good point. When you look at the history of the SEC, they don't have those prototype pro quarterbacks.
Well, I think they've gone lately. We're seeing a lot more of these spread attacks. We're seeing it at Auburn, and I think Ole Miss has gone to that with Hugh Freeze. So that's certainly affected where you're going to play quarterback. And I think what Nick Saban said this week about LSU, I thought was very interesting, where he talked about they're really more like a Big Ten team. I think that's Cam Cameron and Les Miles' influence, the Schembechler influence. And in a way, they're almost so far against the grain nationally that this might work. I mean, it might be like that. There's a T-shirt you see around New Orleans where you see the evolutionary tree and it says New Orleans, we're so far behind, we're ahead.
Right.
That might be LSU's offense. They may reverse themselves and be ahead of the grain because they've gone to this traditional old school style offense that other people aren't going to be able to defend because everybody's spread out.
Right, but you got to have the threat of a quarterback, a threat at the quarterback position. You got to have a threat.
Well, look, I think Brandon Harris is the guy. I mean, Brandon Harris was a huge recruit.
Yes.
He's a big-time talent. A lot of people think he's going to be a high draft choice. He's a freshman. So, let's have a little patience here and see how things go forward. The year was supposed to be next year at LSU.
Right. Yeah, and I think
if you look
definitely be
look
next
at the
year.
roster.
Next year, on both sides
who's
of the ball.
Who's going to beat this team next year if everybody comes back? They're going to be very difficult.
Speaking of LSU, Alabama hangover this week against Arkansas?
It's going to It's going to be tough. I mean, going there, Arkansas had that rest, and it's going to be, of course, bad weather, it's looking like. But I think they're going to – LSU's defense is what's going to get them to victory in this game, I think. They're 5th in the nation in scoring defense, and we've been talking all night about the quarterback spot. You know, they're going to really lean on the running game. I think both sides are going to really lean on their run games. Arkansas, of course, with those two backs right there, Collins and Williams, I believe. But yeah, I think it's really going to be a battle in the trenches. I
agree with Rachel. I think we're going to know really early in this game how LSU is going to fare.
Yeah. Right.
I think we're going to be able to tell if Arkansas is able to line up and have success on the ground. I think they could be in trouble because I know I wouldn't want to play in this weather. Right. No. I had trouble walking into the studio, much less playing football.
There was no sleet or snow on the way in, that's for sure. Saints Cincinnati, what do you think?
I think the Saints are going to roll this team. I think the disparity in quarterback play is as great as it gets in the NFL. I think Cincinnati's in a little bit of a nosedive. This team's really, I think, going to struggle in the toughest division in football this year, the AFC North.
Yes.
We saw that against Cleveland. Now, they're going to get their best shot because they've had a long time to stew over that loss to the Browns. But I just don't think they're talented enough. I thought this was a team ripe for a dive this year, a lot like Carolina. And I think we're seeing it right now play out.
Rachel, your thoughts on Sunday in the Dome?
Right. I think the Saints are going to win convincingly as well. I think that, Cincinnati, I mean, they beat Baltimore twice, but then they go and lose to Cleveland by 3 touchdowns. It's just, you don't know where the Bengals are gonna go. Although it is nice for them to have Jeremy Hill. You know, he's really come on. I mean, that long touchdown against Jacksonville, that had to have been nice for him. But I think the Saints are going to come out at home and really win on their own.
Put it this way: if they lose, hit the red panic button.
Yeah, you better, because that's a tough road to hoe for the rest of the season. And I think they'll win too. I don't think there'll be a hangover left over from the San Francisco game, and they realize what's at stake here now. You know, 7 games left. This season goes very, very quickly.
It's amazing.
And I know they couldn't have envisioned themselves at 4-5 at this point of the season. So this is kind of a must-win game.
It's their
seems
division
like
to lose,
every week has been a must-win game for this team.
And look, it's all about the postseason. I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan, and they just won the World Series. They got hot at the right time, and they propelled themselves through the postseason. I think this could be a year where we see another New York Giants style late momentum swing. I think it's wide open. I don't think the Arizona Cardinals scare anybody. I know they're playing very well. I know they got the best record in the NFC, but that's a team, if you get them in the playoffs, the Saints can beat Arizona in Arizona. I don't think there's any doubt. So I really think that this thing's still wide open. There's a lot to play for.
Finally, Tulane taking on Memphis. Homecoming, coming off probably their biggest win since CJ's taken over. Jeff, your thoughts?
Well, look, I want to see what turnout they get. If the weather's bad, I'm interested to see that. But I'm also interested in seeing how they come back and rebound after a big win like that. Can they carry it over? I want to see some consistency. I know that's always a problem with a young team. Curtis Johnson, I think, wants to see how this team plays. I'm very impressed with Fuente, the coach at Memphis. I think he's a guy that next year we could see some major programs looking at him. They're not going to be an easy out.
Yeah. Rachel?
Right. Yeah, that win against Houston, the co-conference leaders, that really said a lot about the program. And coming home after that, they got Tanner Lee, who coming off a great game. I think they'll do well.
I'm hoping the energy of homecoming and a full stadium will get them over the top. They got to stay away from turnovers. That's been kind of the key to their season.
Yeah, and their special teams are playing a little bit better, which was a huge problem earlier in the year.
Early in the year, yes. The kicking game was...
It was atrocious, yes. No doubt. Well, guys, thanks for being with us tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Rachel Whittaker and Jeff Duncan of NewOrleans.com, NOLA.com, and also the Times-Picayune. And thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. and on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette at 9 p.m. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on 990 a.m. WGS. KSL. And of course, you can always download my podcast or listen live to the radio show at ericasher.com. And if you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can catch those at ericasher.com as well. Also, special thanks to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juno, and my director, William Hill. My name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next week, Thursday night, 6 p.m., right here on WLAE TV.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisby's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbysrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.